Everyone, we'll get started in a few minutes. Just give everyone time to log in. Awesome. Well, I think we can get started now. Have a few others trickle in, but we're really excited to have you join today. We're excited to share how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the behavior of NFL fans, those watching at home, and those cheering on their teams in the stands. Today, I will be hosting alongside Ariel. My name is Kara May. I'm on the business development team of AWS Data Exchange. If you aren't familiar with our service, we launched in November of 2019, and we work with providers such as Foursquare to help them reach millions of AWS customers, to help them seamlessly deliver data without having to maintain infrastructure of data storage, delivery, and billing. And then we also work with data subscribers to help them easily find new data providers and new data sources, and then easily subscribe to it and ingest that data and use that data in the cloud. And I'll allow Ariel to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Ariel Eck and I am Director of Data and Insights over at Foursquare. For those of you who aren't as familiar with Foursquare, Foursquare is the leading independent location technology platform. Location is at the center of everything that we do. We understand location and how people are moving about the world and how those patterns are changing over time. We use that knowledge and our proprietary technology to help brands, developers, marketers, and analysts understand consumers and better engage with them. So we have a lot of really rich data that we're excited to partner with Amazon to provide to everyone via Amazon Data Exchange. So excited to come together today.
Great, thanks, Ariel. And as a reminder, feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar, and we'll be able to have a Q&A session at the end to either have Ariel or myself address them. But getting started, we all know that the 2020 and 2021 football season was definitely like no other, with COVID-19 restrictions around stadium attendance changing day by day and also team by team. There were also many sports bars that were limited in terms of just having outdoor dining or delivery, preventing fans from actually going to bars to cheer on their teams. And while fans could still definitely catch games in their homes, NFL ratings were also down. And so with the Super Bowl coming this Sunday, we decided to bring together Inscape's TV viewership data and Foursquare's location data to learn about the relationship between football fan TV viewing habits and their real world activity.
So how can you use these two different types of data to learn more about the relationship between football fans' TV viewing habits and their real-world activity? Combined, we are able to provide a comprehensive picture of this shifting landscape. So we started with the hypothesis that fans who are still going to NFL games in real life since the pandemic began last year are probably more likely to be out and about in general compared to the average US consumer and compared to the football fans that are watching at home. In order to test that hypothesis, we combined Foursquare's first-party visitation data with TV viewership data from Inscape, Vizio's data product with anonymized insights from 17 million opt-in TVs across America. For this study, we focused on the top 20% of NFL TV viewers to remove those occasional casual viewers, and we looked at their behavior from March through December 2020. So by combining TV viewership data with location data, it's possible to quantify that relationship between TV viewership and foot traffic to physical locations. So today we're going to outline the top 4 findings from our research where we tested that hypothesis, and then we'll outline how to mimic this research to inform your own marketing strategies. These insights that follow can be used by media and entertainment companies, but also by brands that align with sports, such as liquor brands and other CPG brands, sports bar chains, auto advertisers, and more. First, we'll give you a sneak preview of 4 of the top findings from the research. Stick with us though, because there is some interesting nuance within each of these different areas. So first, we were surprised to find that the football fans who are frequently watching NFL games on TV are actually more out and about visiting non-essential businesses in the real world in 2020 than those who are attending games in real life. And we'll get into a little bit of why that is and looking at those different types of non-essential businesses. The second, we decided to take a closer look at travel and whether football stadium goers were going to away games, but actually NFL TV viewers were more likely to be traveling in the past year versus people going to games in person. We also took a closer look at nightlife activities and found some interesting nuance around NFL game attendees and at-home viewers in regards to on-premise versus off-premise. And lastly, we looked at age cohorts of stadium goers and found that people who are going to those games in person are really skewing younger than ever before. So with that, we'll dive into each of the 4 trends. The first finding, which is really surprising, was that at-home football viewers were actually more out and about than those who are attending games IRL in real life this past year. In this chart, you'll see foot traffic to shops and services, and you'll see that starting from the beginning of the pandemic in a baseline period from February 2020, foot traffic has increased significantly amongst frequent NFL TV viewers, whereas amongst the average US consumer, foot traffic has sort of just now recovered. So while foot traffic was fairly stable with the general population since early May, foot traffic to shops and services gradually picked up amongst those NFL TV viewers since April. And leading into the holiday season, the visits were up about 56% as of the end of December. In addition to watching football on TV, these fans are likely getting active themselves, and so we can dive into the different types of shops and services that they're going to. We looked at foot traffic to all venues as well, and then focused in on non-essential businesses, so places like nightlife and travel. And so in this chart, you can see that the traffic to shops and services amongst these NFL TV viewers was significantly up. So the previous slide showed as compared to the general population, and then this shows amongst the TV viewers their traffic trends to these different types of places. So 100 being the baseline period of normal visitation. We're seeing these people are, while there was a dip early on in the pandemic, now they are much more out and about. In terms of the types of non-essential businesses that these NFL fans are going to, one area that stood out for us was that they're more likely to be going to the gym. So maybe they're into fitness and wellness and more likely to be willing to go to a gym in person versus doing sort of online workout videos and things like that we saw the general population taking up this year. So both stadium goers and NFL TV viewers were more likely than the average consumer to be visiting gyms in 2020. But in particular, those TV viewers were more likely to go to their favorite gym chains, and here's a couple of the top chains that stood out. They're also more likely to go to other types of entertainment venues. And so while they might not necessarily be going to the football game in person, they were more likely to go to places like casinos and pool halls and racetracks, whereas those who were going to NFL games, maybe that game was the one IRL entertainment activity that they decided to pursue, and they're not necessarily going to these other places. The last area that was really interesting within this non-essential business bucket was also around moviegoers. And so, for example, we looked at Cinemark, and you can see that football fans across the board are more likely than the average American to be going to movie theaters once they started opening back up a bit last year. And in particular, the people who are going to football stadiums this year are going to movie theaters, but overall, definitely an interesting trend where the propensity to engage in watching sports IRL was correlated to the interest in going back to that big screen movie theater experience. The second trend is taking a closer look at travel. So we know that normally football fans are, going to home games, but also going to away games. And so it was interesting to see that, amongst people who went to football games in the prior season before the pandemic began, they are significantly more likely to be visiting travel categories such as airports, airport lounges, food courts. And in contrast, we saw that this year, people who were going to NFL games were actually less likely to be traveling, even less likely than the average American. So while they're going to games, they're not necessarily traveling to away games and just sticking to those home games to cheer on their favorite team, which was interesting, right? Because this year that home versus away game became much less of a factor. We saw a similar trend when looking at other types of travel categories, such as overnight accommodations and hotels. You can see the similar pattern here of football fans from before the pandemic, definitely on the road and staying overnight places, whereas this year, a lot less likely. Lastly, we looked at rental car locations, further evidence of this same trend. So National Rental Car, for example, was popular amongst NFL stadium goers before the pandemic, and now we see that football stadium goers are less likely to visit all these different rental car locations. So if they're going to the game, they're probably going from their home to a home game, driving themselves, not necessarily on the road. And this was also interesting because we did see in general people were spending more time on the road in 2020. So, the airport trend, certainly a different story because we saw airport traffic down overall last year, but interesting that people weren't even road tripping perhaps to get to their away games. So this is sort of a summary of that trend across airports, rental car locations, and hotels. But interesting to see the opposite trend, right, amongst the NFL TV viewers, where similar to how they were more likely to go to other types of entertainment venues, they're more likely to be traveling since the pandemic began, whether it's for leisure or visiting their family, more likely than the average US consumer to visit all these different locations. The third trend is taking a closer look at nightlife activities amongst US consumers. And this is a focus area given that many alcohol and bar brands are focused on aligning with the Super Bowl. We wanted to take a closer look at how our data could shed light on those strategies for the Super Bowl and for planning around sports in 2021. NFL TV viewers are still socializing and partaking in nightlife activities. They're more likely to be visiting on-premise locations, including sports bars, but also places like pubs, beer gardens, and beer bars. They're also more likely to be going to off-premise locations, such as beer stores, wine shops like Total Wine, and marijuana dispensaries. So they, may be going to watch the game at a sports bar if those sports bars are open. And then if they're watching at home, which is likely how they are most of the time, they are, buying beer and wine and liquor to watch and enjoy that game from home, maybe hosting friends in the yard and doing what we can to make this football season festive. In contrast, we saw that the football game attendees were, while they were more likely than the average US consumer to be going to bars when those bars were open, they were actually less likely than the average US consumer to be visiting off-premise locations. And so this was a bit surprising to us that maybe they're not prepping as much, maybe they're not tailgating as much ahead of those games, or maybe when they are watching at home, instead of going to the game, maybe not necessarily making it quite as much of an event. So this shows the comparison side by side, a summary of this trend. You can see across all these different categories. The frequent NFL TV viewers definitely showing the strongest affinity to visit both on and off premise this year, and lower propensities amongst the stadium goers, especially with off premise. The last trend that we wanted to get into is around the age of the consumers who are going to football stadiums this year. So comparing stadium goers from 2019 to 2020, here you can see the percentage broken out by each age cohort. In fact, the majority of fans who are visiting football games this year were under 44 years old. About 58% of football stadium visitors in 2020 were 18 to 44 versus 54% in 2019. So definitely shifting younger year over year. Similarly, 43% were under 34 this year versus only 38 to 39% in 2019. Diving a little bit more into, the lifestyle of these fans beyond just how old they are, we saw similar trends start to come out, where football stadium visitors in 2020 were more likely to be fans of other college sports or maybe college students themselves. So compared to the average American, they were more likely to be visiting these football, basketball courts, baseball fields, in addition to professional sporting venues. So while many college students were sent home last year, maybe some were staying around campus, still trying to stay active, and these might have been the people who were going to football games still. Also worth noting that the restrictions around attendance to professional football obviously differed from those around college sports, and so that could be another reason behind this trend where they were more able to go to those games as well as the NFL games. So here's an example showcasing this trend again as well. But overall, really interesting to see that, perhaps younger generations are a little bit more prone to go to those sort of crowded locations like a stadium this year, and that's certainly impacting the makeup of the football fan viewership in real life. So recapping some of these different trends that we've seen before we dive into sort of how to do this yourself. Again, football fans who frequently watch NFL games on TV were actually more out and about than those who were attending games in real life this past year, and more so than the average US consumer. So when you're reaching football fans via TV buying platforms, definitely keep in mind that they maybe have a higher propensity to be out and about in the physical world, not only going to essential businesses like grocery stores and gas stations, but also more likely to go to non-essential businesses like gyms or movie theaters. Second, football fans are less likely to travel to away games since the pandemic began, but TV football viewers are a bit more likely to travel than the average American. So when you think about travel brands wanting to align with football, we can think about perhaps focusing on those TV viewers and less so on the stadium goers. Also helpful to keep in mind perhaps changes in how people are traveling, whether they're road tripping or flying, whether they're taking advantage of overnight accommodations. All of that has really been in flux, and we expect to continue that sort of change in travel propensity as we move into 2021. The third trend to recap is around nightlife activities. So both NFL game attendees and at-home NFL viewers were more likely to go to nightlife venues than the average American consumer. So liquor brands can rest assured that by reaching NFL fans, whether on TV or those attending in real life, you'll be reaching people who are open to going to bars again when they have the ability to do so in their area. But that being said, in terms of off-premise strategies, you might want to focus more on those NFL game, the at-home viewers versus the game attendees. And lastly, around ages, we want to keep in mind that the people who are going to the football stadiums are skewing younger than ever before. And so when thinking about encouraging people to go to games or advertising around games, keeping in mind that you have a younger audience than you're used to, and tailoring messaging according to that trend. So now we'll dive into sort of how to take advantage of this type of research yourself. And so the beauty of location data is that it allows you to identify the people who are staying at home versus those who are out and about. People who are focused on only getting takeout and delivery or ordering their essentials online, and only going to essential businesses versus those who are incredibly eager to take advantage of, indoor or outdoor dining when those are open, the people who are ready to shop for non-essentials like clothes and shoes in person. By looking at location data in near real time with Foursquare, you're able to segment those different people, not just sort of by looking at age and gender, but by thinking about their real world physical observed behavior. And so, myself, a 31-year-old woman, I might be more likely to be staying at home, but I might have another 30-year-old woman friend who is eager to go out and about. And so that's why it's important to sort of go beyond just demographics or even geography and think about mindset and risk tolerance and propensities to visit places. So while this analysis was focused on how TV programming influences consumer behavior, marketers can leverage the same technology to measure TV ads effectiveness on store visitation. And so Foursquare attribution is a great way to look at whether someone was exposed to a TV ad and then measure whether they're more likely to visit your location after having seen that ad. Second is around targeting. Marketers can leverage specific location-based audiences with TV ads and tap into TV ad buying platforms such as the Amazon advertising platform to reach those different types of audiences that they talked about. So you could be reaching people who are going to bars, people who are a fan of pool halls in particular for a specific promotion. You can reach those who are shopping at the grocery store 3 times a week versus only every other week. And really, really rich, specific niche audiences are possible with the power of our audience offering, and our integrations with these different platforms allow you to dynamically identify and reach those people, again, in near real time. And the last piece is the ultimate do-it-yourself version, which enables researchers to conduct this type of trend analysis yourselves for planning and strategy. So with Foursquare visits on Amazon Data Exchange, you can start to combine data like Foursquare's with other data sets, such as Inscape, and derive these types of even richer insights that you'd be able to get with one data set alone. So that's really the beauty of our relationship with Amazon Data Exchange, is that we have the privilege of coming together with other data providers to tell an even more interesting story, and we encourage you to do the same. I'll toss it back to Kara to wrap up.
Thanks, Ariel. That was super insightful, and now we'll definitely open it up to any questions that you had throughout the presentation. And so one of the first questions is where and how can you get this data? So this data is available on AWS Data Exchange, and we'll also share contact information of Foursquare. So if there is specific data you're looking for that you might not be able to find on the exchange, Foursquare is always definitely willing to work with you to see if they have the data that you need. Another question, this might be better for Ariel. Can you share any examples of how specific brands are using this data to make decisions today?
Yeah, absolutely. So the three ways I mentioned before are the key ways in which brands are using this. So to plan, to reach, and then to measure. So for example, if we were thinking about an alcohol brand, you'd be able to work with Foursquare to understand in what geographies and what types of people are moving about and going to bars more. We have a great resource called the Recovery Index, which allows you to go in and in near real time see whether traffic to bars in specific states and even counties is going up or down by week. So that's a great sort of planning tool. And then from there, we have this really robust audience designer where a brand can go in and build an audience where they can say, hey, I want to reach people in real time when they're within a 10-minute drive of one of the bars that offers my beverages, or I want to reach people who have been to bars in the last 30 days who are also, young men who have frequented sporting goods stores and start to build out these really rich audiences to deliver the right messaging to them. And I think that's key as well, is thinking about tailoring the messaging, as I mentioned before, to someone who's staying at home versus someone who is out and about, to make sure that you're driving relevance and ultimately greater business outcomes. And the last piece is around measurement, which I think we actually have had some other questions about. So for example, with a liquor brand, we'd be able to help them quantify the impact of seeing that ad on their propensity to go to that list of accounts. So what we do is we model out a person's general propensity to be visiting a set of locations, whether it's a custom group of accounts that a liquor brand has or a chain like Buffalo Wild Wings. What we can start to do is see how likely is a person to visit that place normally, given lots of different factors such as historical visitation, age, gender, region. Our methodology encompasses lots and lots of different factors into that model to understand the propensity. And then from there, we take the exposure and we look at exposure across every different channel pretty much. So we can look at TV exposure, but we can also look at things like out-of-home ads, audio ads on Spotify, Pandora, social ads on Twitter and Snap. So we measure across all these different channels the exposure to the advertisement, and then we're able to detect what we call visit lift, or the increase in that likelihood to visit those places as a result of the ad. We have a really robust dashboard where we enable brands to tap into that data in near real time to optimize their buys according to what's performing better by creative, by partner, by tactic. So hopefully that somewhat answers the measurement question. Let's see, one more question it looks like came in around where we get the data. So Foursquare has the industry's largest first-party panel of consumers who have opted in to share their always-on location. They are using either Foursquare's owned and operated apps, such as Swarm and City Guide, but then also our partner apps who are using the Pilgrim SDK software developer kit to enable location contextual experiences within their own apps. So all these apps are providing true utility to the customer by sharing your location. So for example, if you're embedded in a weather app, someone wants to turn on their location within that app because they'd be able to get a notification when they're leaving the stadium and it's about to rain, they can go be a push notification, receive a push notification recommending a sports bar nearby that they could duck into because they have their location enabled within that app. So these different SDK partners who have used Pilgrim then funnel into this first party panel for our measurement solution. So hopefully that addresses where we get the data from. Mobile apps. So the data, correct, the data is coming, in terms of visitation, the data is coming from mobile apps. But in terms of exposure, it's across every different channel, not just mobile apps. So we're able to see visitation from those different apps where people have their location on, and then combine that with our understanding of what they've been exposed to, because we have that digital identifier. One more question came in around age and gender. So the age that we looked at and gender, the age that we looked at was regardless of gender, but we do look at and report on both age and gender in our visit data available on Amazon. In our audience designer, we can cut by age and gender, and in attribution, you can look at metrics cut by age and gender. So all of that is readily available in our solutions. You can cut by both age and gender, so only male millennials, or can just look at all millennials together. A lot of flexibility there in terms of how we cut it to give you the data you need. Let's see. Looking to see if we have any other questions to cover. Trying to see them as they come in to make sure we get everyone's. And definitely happy to set up any follow-up meetings to dive deeper into our methodology around measurement or any of our solutions. If you're interested in partnering with Foursquare and Amazon, we can connect you to the experts in each of these different product areas. Any final questions?
Okay, I think we might be done with questions, but thanks so much, Ariel and Foursquare. And as Ariel mentioned, don't hesitate. We'll be sending out the information we presented today. There's contact information included in there, so definitely don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.